Near-death experiences, or NDEs, are experienced by people all over the world. Are near-death experiences just hallucinations of a dying brain? Or are they evidence that our consciousness can survive death? Or are they evidence of life in the hereafter? These questions and more in this video on near-death experiences. In the year 2022, there is no denying that near-death experiences do exist. Near-death experiences are profound, subjective experiences that people have when they come close to death and sometimes even after they've been pronounced dead by a physician. Most near-death experiences include a sense of leaving the physical body, reviewing one's life, or encountering some non-physical entity. Most people who have a near-death experience say their senses were incredibly heightened, and they often report hearing sounds they haven't heard before and seeing colors they haven't seen before. After the near-death experience, they often have a hard time explaining their experiences because there aren't words for them to describe the experience. After a near-death experience, most people are profoundly changed. The term near-death experience, or NDE, means exactly what the words say. It is an experience of near death, not just being dead. However, so many YouTube videos, TV shows, and articles use the term near-death experience as being synonymous with dying or death. These people in these shows and videos say, "I died and came back," or "Here's what I saw when I was dead," and other similar claims. A near-death experience is exactly that, near death and not being dead. Death is a medical term for the cessation of blood circulation and breathing, the two necessary criteria to sustain human life. However, the true moment of death is not when the last breath has been taken, nor when the heartbeat stops, because these are functions of the physical body. The exact moment of death is the cessation of all brain activity. This is the moment when the spirit makes its lightning-like escape into the afterworld. Most near-death experiences around the world and throughout the centuries are the same. There are even detailed experiences from ancient Rome in the 1st century. There are examples of near-death experiences from the Middle East, from Asia, from Africa, and even from ancient cultures such as the Aboriginal people in Australia and Native American cultures. And these near-death experiences sound exactly like the stories that we hear today. However, the way each of these people describe their near-death experience is influenced by their cultural background. People all around the world will describe their near-death experience as encountering a warm, loving being of light that radiates unconditional love towards them. If you ask someone who was raised in the United States, they may identify this experience as God or Jesus, whereas someone who was raised in India wouldn't use those terms. In other words, where you were raised, how you were raised, and what your specific religious or spiritual beliefs are will determine how you interpret the near-death experience. During the dying process and prior to death, there is a state called agony. Billy defines the word agony as death struggle, and the Oxford Duden German Dictionary defines agony as in the throes of death. This is an important distinction because the word agony is generally used in English as intense pain of mind or body. Agony is also defined by the Merriam-Webster Dictionary as the struggle that precedes death. And this is the accurate definition for agony when used to describe the dying process. The state of agony is also accompanied by loss of consciousness. Billy further defines agony as, quote, the actual dying stage, which slowly allows life to drain away through reduced vital processes. Agony, explained differently, is a state of increasing restriction, dysregulation, of vital bodily functions, vita reducta or vita minima, end quote. These last two terms are Latin and mean reduced life. Generally speaking, the beginning of agony is shown by the Hippocratic face, or in Latin, facies Hippocratica. The term Hippocratic face is named this because it was first described by Hippocrates of Kos, a Greek physician who is traditionally referred to as the father of medicine because of his lasting contributions to the field of medicine. The Hippocratic face is the change produced in the face at the onset of agony and can include a pointed and pale nose, sunken eyes or temples, cool ears, and a pale gray skin color. The state of agony is also accompanied by loss of consciousness. In addition to the state of agony, there is also a pre-agony state that occurs during the dying process. This pre-agony state is a gradual transition into agony where the consciousness is not yet switched off and hovers between consciousness and unconsciousness. Billy also calls this the twilight awake state of consciousness. This pre-agony state, or twilight awake state of consciousness, is when near-death experiences appear. During this twilight awake state of consciousness, thoughts and feelings are still generated in accordance with the attitude, way of life, and ways of thinking of the person. These thoughts and feelings then produce visions, which the person still consciously perceives and stores in their memory, which is still functioning. During this twilight awake state of consciousness, absolute peace and absolute inner freedom arise. During this time of thoughts, feelings, peace, and inner freedom, visions are formed from the hopes and desires that were built up over a lifetime. And it is exactly these visions that are stored in memory that become the near-death experience. The visions experienced during this twilight awake state come from the unconscious and subconscious and are clearly perceived and stored in memory by the consciousness. These visions can include all forms of experience: sight, sound, touch, and in many cases produce pictorial or experiential solutions or resolutions to tensions or conflicts within our consciousness or psyche. For example, if someone has lost a loved one prematurely and has spent many years thinking about that person, then one of these visions might be of reuniting with the loved one. Another example could be that a deeply religious person meets with God, Jesus, Yahweh, Brahma, or Vishnu. It's important to understand that because of each person's life experience, upbringing, beliefs, wishes, and desires, the visions experienced during the pre-agony state will be fundamentally different for each person. Near-death experiences usually take place in a bright tunnel of light, as seen by the dying person, from which, or at the end of which, loving figures approach the dying person. In most cases, it is beloved family members, relatives, or friends, and in rare cases, strange human figures. This tunnel of light is simply a product of the brain, which is the result of the reduction of breathing and thereby a reduction of oxygen supply to the nerve cells that control vision. Because of the reduced oxygen, the nerve cells begin to react in an uncontrolled manner and produce light rays or radiant light, which manifests as a brightly shining tunnel of light. The nerve cells that are affected are primarily located in the center of the visual field, so the light rays or radiant light produce a tunnel effect, which is perceived as a vision by the dying person. This is the typical effect described by the dying person as the tunnel to the afterworld, in which relatives, friends, angels, or even God appear to lead the person to the afterworld. All of these visions that take place in the pre-agony state are stored in memory because the underlying consciousness is still functioning. Therefore, if the person does recover from the pre-agony state and regains normal consciousness, he can remember these visions and have the erroneous opinion that he has died and came back. However, the opinion of dying and coming back to life is not true because he did not die. He was only in a near-death state called pre-agony or twilight awake state of consciousness. The moment of death is when the life bond or interconnection between the spirit form and the body is broken. At this moment, the spirit form and the overall consciousness block withdraw from the body and enter into the afterworld realm. After this has happened, there is no possibility of return to the body for the spiritual forms. If for some reason a person recovers from death, then this person was not really dead, but only in a near-death state, vita reducta or vita minima, because current medical techniques cannot accurately detect all of the signs of life. So, in summary, near-death experiences take place when a dying person transitions into the pre-agony state, where their consciousness hovers between consciousness and unconsciousness. During this pre-agony state, thoughts and feelings form visions based on the hopes and desires that were built up over a lifetime. These visions are stored as memories, and if the dying person recovers from the pre-agony state, then these memories become what is commonly known as a near-death experience.